Good morning, everyone. I think you should see both of us now on your screen. Thank you for joining us this morning. I am Baughman. We appreciate each of you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us this morning. I'm just going to cover a few housekeeping type of things before Ben comes on and shares his thoughts into his book, Untracked. For those that aren't familiar with using this webinar software, just a couple things to be aware of. The bottom left of your screen, we have I'm sorry, it's probably at the top right of your screen. It's a moderated chat box. And in there at the bottom, you can type in your questions, your comments, and it will come to Ben and I. We will see it from our end. And then we'll respond accordingly. If you want to share comments, questions, thoughts, you can do that two ways. I mentioned the moderated chat box, which you can use at the bottom there. Just click send. We will see that from our end, and then we'll respond accordingly. Or the other option is to, at the bottom of your video box there should be a button that says ask a question. You can click on that and ask your question verbally, and sometimes that might be easier. So you're welcome to do either way. I think that's it as far as housekeeping. Any questions with that? Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to turn it over to Ben. He's going to share some thoughts about the readings that we did for this morning, and then we'll invite you all to participate as well. All right, go ahead, Ben.
Okay. This morning, there's two chapters we're going to look at. The first one is just very brief, of course. That's the chapter 6. That's that place I was at 66 now. So that is old now. But uh, as I was looking at it, I was laughing because I realized that my hindsight of 65 years is now the hindsight of 66 years. And one more year separated perhaps from that transition out of pastoring a church and uh, moving to a different place in my life, I have discovered some things. There's even more hindsight now than there was a year ago. And I won't share all that hindsight now, of course. There's things I've learned in the last year, but it's great to continue to learn. And as we get older, hopefully we put together the things that have come our way over the years, and they begin to show up in seeing things differently in a wiser fashion. Like, it's an interesting time for me because today, because this is the anniversary date for me of my first wife's marriage, 40 years with Brenda. And some of you on here know her or knew her. And so it's the 17th today, and that was our anniversary. And so if I could just say very quickly to her in heaven, I love you, hon. It was incredible being married to you. But I think I'm going to shift it back over because I think Carmen's going to share some of her story because God has blessed me so incredibly richly. He gave me this wonderful wife. And now he's given me my second chance at a lady who is certainly my, she's just absolutely unbelievably wonderful, just as God created her. And I am so privileged to have her as my wife. Mama?
All right. So I'm since we're admitting our ages, I've never done this. I don't think publicly of this, but I'm 55. And as many of you know, I knew Ben and Brenda for a number of years prior to Brenda's passing. I was very good friends with Brenda. And as I read the chapter 65 this morning that Ben had written, he actually wrote that before we were married. And then when we went to publish the book, we were married, so we had to update it and add at least a paragraph in there. So It's an interesting process. Anyway, back a bit to my story, and because in the chapter 65, he shares a bit of his story. You know, it might be an opportunity to share a bit of mine or our story together, and maybe invite some of you as well. But the question that Ben had presented about this chapter was, where are you in your life right now? And I must admit, my life is a whole lot different than it was, say, just 3 or 4 years ago. Ben and I were married almost 2 years ago, and I'd been single my whole life, and was kind of planning on being single the rest of my life at my age, and of course we all know that turned into something different. And it's true for all of us. As we look back over the years, I think the older we get, the less we realize, the less we really know. As a single person for many years, I was very content and very happy. There was still a part of me that wanted to be married, but I was okay with where I was at in life, and that's probably the challenge for all of us, is to be okay with where we're at. And getting married at my age, prior to it, you kind of wonder, how is this going to be? Because I've been single for so long, and how will the transition be? How will the adjustment be? And I must admit, I'm incredibly surprised, and it probably speaks more volume of whom I married. Is it was just like the switch turned, the switch flipped. I went from single to being married, and it's been wonderful. And I think, kind of just to wrap this up, I think I want to go back to, again, looking back, when things look different now that I've been married nearly a couple years than when I was single. And I think the key there is just learning as we go, and maybe helping others as we go along, as through our experiences in whatever situation we're at. So I think that's it, hon.
Okay, and maybe to ask the question, where are you at in your life right now? And maybe there's some of you that would like to respond to that. So I'm going to give a moment to that. Where are you at right now in your life? Where in the process do you feel like you are? And maybe even just some words that express it, or anything else, and that we can look at here and see. But I'm going to give a moment and take another sip or two of coffee, which I trust you've got your cup of tea or coffee or whatever it is you drink with you. And I'll give you a moment here and just write down words, maybe even, or whatever they would be, or a sentence. Or phrase.
I think we have a quiet
If
bunch this morning.
If you're like me, sometimes those are hard if you haven't had the chance just to sit with it for a while. So I'm not going to push that one and try to get you to have to do that. But, hey, interesting.
We have one.
Yes,
We have one person that comes exploring outside the bounds of denominations. Very good.
interesting, interesting. Yes, and that's in some ways a lonely place to be in, exploring outside the bounds of denominations, and but one that I as well are doing right now, and that's an interesting piece. Anyone else in there?
There's someone else that shares completely different focus that I would have ever thought looking forward.
Very interesting. Yes.
And
Yes.
I'll add to that. How true is that? I think, especially when we're younger, as we look forward, we have expectations of how life will look, and things happen, and things change, and we change on the inside, and it doesn't. Sometimes it turns out that way, sometimes it doesn't. But when it doesn't, how do we navigate that? And I think I like the comment here about we're looking forward. not only do we look forward, but also look forward to what's ahead as well in anticipation.
As you continue, and there may be more comments coming in, but I realized I had a really interesting thought process this morning as I was just sitting with this early. I get up early. And so as I was just sitting with this, and I turned the light on, and up on my shelf up here, I have a picture of Holmesy, the one that you've read the story in the book about Holmesy. And it's a picture of Holmesy, and I'm sitting with him, and I'm probably 5 or 6. I'm either 5 or 6 at that time because those were the 2 years. And this thought ran through my mind. I wonder, I wonder what Holmesy's dreams were. I wonder what he thought life would be like. I wonder if he thought he would be in his 70s and janitor, living in the basement of a big old church in Seattle, Washington. It was just this crazy thought process. And then I thought, did he even know the influence he had on me? I have no idea if he does. Did. I'm sure he's long, long gone now. That's many, many years ago as an older man at that time. And did he have any idea of that? And I thought of that and I thought, sometimes I think our dreams are overrated. I think they're overrated in that we give them too much credence. And sometimes God is just wanting to use us. As Holmesy was used with me, to love me, to care about me, to take care of me, to learn how to dust the back of pews and clean bathrooms and vacuum large floors and play checkers and show me what Jesus was like. And he probably didn't even know he was doing. How incredible when we see from eternity's perspective what God's focus was. That's an incredible thing. Wow. I want to move on just a little bit because I'll get involved emotionally if I start talking about some of those stories. But I want us to move on a little bit because this next chapter that I've chosen to really open the book with, that's where it really starts, is this letter of resignation. And it's been probably one of the more controversial chapters just simply because it starts like it does. It says, I don't want to be known as a Christian anymore. And I think it's from a number of people because Christianity itself is this religion that has grabbed hold of Jesus. And we get the impression after a couple of thousand years of from the time of Jesus, we get the impression that Jesus himself started. And we think he's the founder of religion, and we are led to believe that. So he comes into this almost ownership. He was the founder, even though he wasn't the founder. And so, but because we're led to think that way, we think that he is owned by Christianity, that we have the copyright on it, that the patent is ours on Jesus. And that somehow, if we were to say we were not part of the religion of Christianity, that would mean that we don't have Jesus anymore. Hard no. Hardly so. Christianity did not exist when Jesus came. It was begun later by followers and not really in its original state as a start of a religion at all, but rather those that were disciples, those that were followers of man Jesus, the one they had come to love and care about. And what I realized over the years I had grown very tired of was what the religion of Christianity represented. I was tired of arguing over things that religions and denominations argue. And I was tired of who has their doctrine right, and there were 50,000 different ways of expressing those doctrines. And I was tired of arguing over whether Scripture was inerrant, infallible, or whether it was important to us that we be right on all the issues, and if we were in power or not, and politics and all the stuff that makes the world of power go around, and so many other things. I was tired of trying to entertain people, and I was tired of, and none of that seemed to make any sense. It seemed to just simply stop what I really wanted to do. I wanted to go about being good. Almost desperately wanted. It was something that I had been caught by. And Peter expresses it in the book of Acts. When asked about Jesus, he says he went about doing good. I realized what it really comes down to. Not the politics of whether we are in power or not, but in the earliest of the church, in the earliest of those that were following him, what they had learned from him is they went out and did good everywhere they went. Whether they were categorized as fishermen, whether they were categorized as prostitutes, whether they were categorized as tax collectors or other types of sinners, they'd learn from him to go around doing good. I wanted that. And I realized that was the start of this. But as you read this chapter, I'm just curious what your thoughts and feelings. What did it bring up in you when you started reading it? Did it bother you that I would say I don't want to be known as a Christian anymore? I'm aware that in many ways, a year and a half to 2 years after first writing this, that's even stronger today. I'm in the middle of a political time when we're about to elect a president, and it's probably frightening for all of us to look at our choices. But less and less as I look at the polls and I read all the research, and less and less do I want to be simply known as a Christian. What's that do for you? What kind of thoughts and feelings did this chapter bring up for you? Any expression of those that you can write down as and we can share with others here? I asked you to get coffee.
I think I'll jump in here for a
Just
bit.
go ahead. Okay.
And this is from just some of the reactions that I've had conversations with when we've talked about that statement of not wanting to be known as a Christian anymore. I think it's the response I've seen most often is what you just expressed, Ben, was almost aghast that something like that would be said, and it makes me realize a bit. But once you get past that statement and kind of explore what's really behind that statement, I think it probably resonates with a lot of people. I think we just want to follow Jesus. We don't want the extra noise, the extra. I come from a come from a very conservative background, and so there were lots of rules and regulations and things that you should or should not do. And I didn't know anything else as a young girl growing up. But as I got older, I noticed inside of me, I those things kind of bothered me. And when I moved on and out of away from home and got into college, and then years after that, I realized it's much more than that. It's about falling in love with Jesus, and it's about being like Jesus, and it's a life of it's much more fulfilling and fun than what I had experienced necessarily growing up in the midst of rules and regulations. So I think getting beyond the statement, I don't want to be known as a Christian, but what's behind that is intriguing and very thought provoking, and I think probably resonates with many people.
Thank you, Karma. Um, in that process, I think within this chapter too, you start to get a hint of some things that have bothered me for many years. Is the more I looked at what we call scripture, and the more I looked at it historically, having read through of uh, the early church fathers, and in reading through those, understanding some of the great turmoil and political unrest that took place through all of that. Um, and I think that within all of that context, what I would see when I read scripture, I didn't see what was being told to me. I didn't see this need to make it something that we almost worshiped. I saw instead this wonderful synopsis at times of just stories of God interacting with man, and man interact back. Wow.
We have another comment here, hon.
Yes,
So
please give it.
we have a comment. Christians are also known for their politics, which can also get in the way of someone coming to know the Lord. Not true.
Yes, yes. I just read yesterday that somewhere near 80% of all evangelical Christians will be voting for Donald Trump. I just wanted you to know that. I have no idea why they. It's important that we know that they all vote in a block, but but that's that was the Pew study that came out. I think there's another one there
Yes,
as well. Hon, would you read that to us?
sure. The love your neighbor theme of this chapter was not emphasized in the churches I attended. But as you point out, the early followers of Jesus were known for that. That allowed the early church to grow by 40% per decade.
What an interesting statistic. That's interesting. And don't you wonder what would happen today? I have no interest in growing a religion or one of its subsets. I have no interest in growing a denomination, but I have a deep heart and love that people would fall in love with Jesus, that they would see. I think that's easy for people to do because even those that are not do not go by the name of Christianity and do not have a church affiliation uh, uh, are in wonder of the man Jesus when they just see him as he is, not as he's often presented in the lives of others in the church. But isn't it crazy when you look at this whole thing and we look at the crux of the whole of what became Christianity as a religion, but then it changes within that, and we lose the crux. We just lump it in with all of the other pieces and parts of this story of God and men interacting and people interacting with each other and so on. We lose the crux, but the crux is so easy for us to really see if we'll open ourselves up to it in Scripture. And I think in this chapter, you've seen it, but it's the passages that we can read where they tell us it's the crux. They tell us it's the important one. So Jesus saying, "So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you." For this sums up law and the prophet. Everything else gets summed up in this one little thing we used to call the golden rule. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Or Jesus saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets, so everything else in all of Scripture is summed up in this. And you fulfill it all in those two things. Or him saying that if you will simply love each other as I have loved you, then everyone will know you're my disciple. That seems like that's telling us it's the crux. Or Paul saying, now let me show you the most excellent. If I speak in tongues of men and angels, if I do all these things that are important or I think important and they fit what I need to do out there, that may all be fine. But if I don't have love, I don't know. Or I'm saying at the end of that, now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. Or this statement, the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. Or John talking to us, and he says, dear friends, let us love one another. For love comes from God, and everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. He doesn't say to us, he gives us just this absolute crux, this absolute foundation. He doesn't say to us, now, if you believe right, and if you have the right doctrine, and if you go to the correct church, and if you believe just the right way, he just simply says, everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. How interesting to have that crux. And this is where I sometimes then get in trouble, because it becomes so strong in our religion, in the form that we have of religion. It's become so strong that we must be controlled by the scriptures. So the scriptures as a whole then have become the same as all of the things that are the crux, except that they aren't. Everything else is story, it's example, it's illustration, it's pastoral counseling, Paul or Peter or John attempting to tell others you can live your lives this way. And um, but it's wisdom, it's direction, but it's not all the crux. Crux is found in this: God loves us, believes in us, passionate. He sends Jesus, and Jesus, human being like you and I, shows us what it means to love and says to us, there's nothing more important than this. Treat others like you'd like to be treated. Fall in love with God, love Him, and love other people the same as you would like to be loved. God is love. How incredible that is. And we pass the story of God on through our love, not through our doctrine, not through being part of a religion. We pass it on because of love. What an incredible thing that is. Do you think that's right? Do you think that's the way it ought to be? Do you think, or do you think the way we've followed as religion, as the religion of Christianity, is important for us to continue on, or do you think that something needs to desperately change? That's the feeling inside of it. If we become irrelevant to the world because we are religious and it isn't relevant. What's relevant is people need to be loved, cared about. They need to know that someone thinks they're important.
And I think
Someone thinks they're valuable. Go
that kind of ties back into the comment about Christians are known for the politics. What if we were known by the love that we share with our neighbors, or with our family, or with our coworkers? What if we were known by the love that we share in our community? It also goes back to the same comment about the growth of the early church. They were known by the love that they shared.
I think it's an interesting thing when you mention that, Hunter, and you bring it back to these two comments. It's really an interesting thing that the amazing growth that is expressed in that 40% per decade, um, growth that took place in the earliest of churches, um, there was no power in the equation. It wasn't if we can just get to the place where we control the lives of others by the laws that we make or by the way that we govern, that somehow that is where the difference is going to be. You know, if we can make sure that everybody is has their basis in our belief system. Instead, the only power was the power that we have over ourselves. It is the self-control. So, as you read in the fruits of the Spirit that Paul had, note that there isn't anything there that deals with power and politics in telling others how they ought to believe, in changing the system that way. But there is this incredible thing, it's power over ourselves. That gives us always the correct kind of power that changes everything. Because now we begin loving those that oftentimes Christians don't love well, even though they may make statements like, we love the sinner, but we hate the sin. That very thing is a judgmental statement that doesn't give us the real power to love that. Instead, we just need to love them, not attempt to change. Let that become the peace that God takes care of. I have often told the story, and I will tell it here just briefly, a piece of it, because I just again met the wife of this person both early on when I was way back and I was just starting. So I was probably 22 or 23 years of age. And I'd spoken at a baccalaureate service, and a couple came up to me afterwards. And they said, "Would you come to our house for Bible study? We'll invite some neighbors in." And I, of course, as a man, was very thrilled with that opportunity and said yes. But what I didn't know is some of the things, the do's and don'ts of my early years were Christians don't smoke and Christians don't drink. Well, I won't tell the name of this gentleman, even though he's gone now. But and I loved him dearly. And we were doing that first Bible study. He chain smoked. I think he went to PAX during the Bible study. And there was always one lit in the ashtray, and there was always one between his lips. And ashes were falling all over my Bible. And I almost said to him, "Would you put those things away? We can't have a Bible study properly with you doing that. And I'm not even sure I want to come back here again." Those were my thoughts as a young man. And as I left that night, I hadn't said those things, and because I'd felt something inside just to check. And I walked away from it, and I felt the voice of God clearly. It was as I went home that night, and He said to me, "You keep your mouth shut. If I want to do something in the heart of this man, I will. Your job is to love him because I love him." Wow, I'll tell you what. Just about a month later, I'll tell this briefly. Just about a month later, he said to me one day, right before we were having another one of the Bible studies, "Pen, do you think I should smoke?" And I just laughed. I said, "Well, what do you think?" He said, "Well, I think I should." He said, "I've smoked like this all my life. I know it's not good for me. I know it's not good for those around me. He said, and I just think I should do it. And he did. And I thought, I am so glad I just kept my mouth shut. What a lack of wisdom on my part if I had piped in and said, you should quit smoking.
We,
I see there's
yeah,
another, hun.
we have another one here. The comment is from Julian, the last pagan Roman emperor. The Christian faith has been specially advanced through the loving service rendered to strangers and through their care for the burial of the dead. It is a scandal that there is not a single Jew who is a beggar, and the godless Galileans, followers of Jesus, care not only for their own poor, but for ours as well, while those who belong to us look in vain for the help that we should render them.
You, Paul, that is a wonderful, wonderful quote from Julian. Um, that that is absolutely the crux of what took Christianity to where it was. I'm sorry it went to the point of Constantine because uh, what happened is that we lost that after it became institutionalized. But its influence was so powerful, it did not matter what the Romans did to persecute them. It had no power at all over them doing good, over them caring for those around them, over them burying the dead, over them taking care of the poor amongst them. What an incredibly powerful thing it is. Thanks for sharing that. That's an awesome quote from Julian. Amazing. Are there any other thoughts or questions you have today? I think as we look into this, I'm excited to go on as well to what really matters, a letter to the existing church, because it has so many questions and thoughts in it, and I'm excited to go on to that. But um, I think you probably understand my resignation, um, and obviously, as you probably know as well by now, I have nothing against those that are in Christianity. It isn't my desire to take them out. It isn't my desire to remove them or to get rid of Christianity. I just realize that there are so many out there that it's become irrelevant to as religion, and that we do not own as Christians the one who loved the world. We don't own Jesus, the stories. They belong to the world out there, belong to everyone. They need to be heard. They need to be shown. They need to be lived. Any other questions or comments this morning? I'll be quiet now for a minute. Is this thought process scary to you? Is it scary, or is it refreshing, or is it both, or is it difficult? And what does it do inside of you to be thinking this way? Thanks. That comment is it encourages me. Are there any of you that it scares a little bit?
I think I'll confess to that one. And I think, and I know we've talked a lot about this and went back and forth. But I remember sitting across from you, Ben, even before anything was between us, but just as friends, And it finally dawned on me what you were saying, and it was almost shocking to me. And I remember leaving that, I think it was we were out to lunch or something. I remember leaving that conversation just kind of quiet, and things are rolling around inside of me. That did I really hear him say that the because I was always brought up that the authoritative side of everything. Um, but as I processed that and thought more about it, kind of dug and dwelt on it, and it wasn't just like a switch went on for me at all when it comes to this. It took me a while to process that and to really grasp what you were saying behind that, and realized what freedom that is in viewing the scriptures that way, and focusing on sharing the love of Jesus versus all the do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
We have another comment there as well. Resigning from being a Christian is almost refreshing. Well said.
I wish we could all be in a room together sometimes, and see each other's faces, and we've chosen as to leave you anonymous because we don't have permission from each of you to express, because some of you may or may not know each other, and we've decided that we will leave your names anonymous at this point. Maybe unless you tell us at some point, oh, please feel free to use my name. But uh, it isn't. As we look at them, of course, we have it in front of us, and uh, it's always fun to see the comments and to hear and understand them, and wish that we could be in a room and say, "What do you mean? Resigning from being a Christian is almost refreshing." Um, I can hear the rest of that conversation, and I wish we could just go back and forth and grin and laugh and talk to each other and be serious at the same time, and work through all of these things. Anything else in there? We're reaching a point today. We're at about the 43 or 44-minute mark, where I think we'll wind it down if there isn't further response. But I I would really encourage you to go through what really matters, a letter to the existing church this next week. And just it's typical. It's a little longer than most of my chapters, which are shorter chapters usually. But I would really encourage you to go through it and just maybe think again about some of the things that are in there, because I would like to have the conversation next week, maybe with you prepared for. It would be wonderful to hear some of your thoughts on that, and most of you that know me know that my skills are not necessarily the organizational skills. I've always drawn organizers around me. Mine are the organization of thoughts, and uh, the things that the trends and so on. But I would love to see coming out of this assemblies of people. When I say that, I don't even think I like that term. Fellowship of people and communities of people forming that are just followers of Jesus. Those that are giving their lives away, that are going about doing good, but they're encouraging each other all the time. I hope this is part of that to you. That I hope it goes beyond this and spreads out from you. God bless all of you. Is there any further comments before we sign off for the day?
I'll jump in here. Thank you, everyone,
Karma?
for joining us this morning. It's a privilege to be able to do this. It's a privilege to stand beside Ben in helping this come about. And we certainly appreciate all of you taking time out of your schedules, and especially on a Sunday morning, to join us. And we also appreciate your thoughts and your comments. So thank you.
Thanks to all of you. God bless you and have a wonderful week coming up.